Welcome to Lead for Good, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. This is a show where the audience will meet and get to know top nonprofit leaders. Together, we will take a deep dive into nonprofit leadership, endeavoring to uncover and unpack the most important characteristics, traits, strategies, and actions of successful nonprofit leaders. Through this journey together, we desire to help you, the nonprofit leader, grow your knowledge and capabilities to lead for good. We want you to achieve your full potential as leaders in the sector. So, welcome to the conversation. We're glad you joined us today. Without further delay, let's join our host, Chris Looney, as he interviews yet another extraordinary leader who is truly leading for good. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Lead for Good, a show for nonprofit leaders that desire to level up their knowledge and skills to reach their full potential as nonprofit leaders. My name is Chris Looney, and I have the good fortune to be your host for this deep dive into nonprofit leadership. Today on the Lead for Good podcast, I'm joined by Corey Dantzler, the executive director of the Al Wooten Jr. Youth Center in Los Angeles. Corey has led the center for years, guiding it forward after its founder's passing and carrying on a powerful legacy of serving youth and families. He brings firsthand experience in what it takes to step into leadership after a founder, how to honor a founder's vision while adapting to today's challenges, and how to navigate the complexity of founder syndrome. We'll explore what leaders need to know when following a founder and how to lead with both respect and, importantly, innovation. So this is going to be a really fun and informative session, and let's jump in. So welcome to the show, Corey.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, let's jump in. Let's start with your leadership origin story. I know that you have a long and celebrated history of working in youth-serving organizations, and I'd love to just know about what that leadership journey has looked like for you.
I always jokingly say that I was one of the few kids that was maybe born with the Boys and Girls Club membership card in his hand. My father was the founder of the Challengers Boys and Girls Club in South Los Angeles, which he found back in 1968 with 12 kids in the back of a pickup truck, taking them to the park one weekend, and the next weekend they told their friends, and he had 24 kids, and it kind of grew and grew from there. And so he was really an innovator in terms of, kind of creating this youth development opportunity for boys at that particular time who maybe had absentee fathers or maybe didn't have a positive role model in their lives. And he took that kind of concept and built it into an organization to where there was an abandoned Vons supermarket that was abandoned back after the Watts riots. That was on the corner of 51st and Vermont. Long and short story was the Vons Corporation, they saw an ad, interview that they did about my dad in the LA Times, and saw that he was asking for a place, somewhere where he can house all these young boys at the time. And Vons deeded that building over to him for $1, and he turned it into Challengers Boys and Girls Club. So I wasn't officially around at that particular time, but I do remember being told that at 2 years old, when my older brother and my dad would leave to go to the Boys and Girls Club, I was the one that was crying with the diaper on and wanting to go with them. Right. And so they let me kind of start hanging around, and from there, every summer was at the Boys and Girls Club. When I turned 14, my first job was at the Boys and Girls Club. When I graduated from college, my first real job was at the Boys and Girls Club. So it's been over a 30-year kind of journey of kind of starting with programs, providing services to youth and families, to being more of an administrative role, into an executive director role, which I feel like my dad kind of groomed me for it. He unfortunately passed away back in 2006, and had the opportunity working next to him between 1992 and 2006, just kind of, getting myself ready for this leadership role. It was difficult at the time because I was still kind of grieving his passing. and still trying to operate and run the organization at the same time. But I was fortunate that I got that many years with him. So that was really the beginning of my really kind of like, leadership opportunities as an executive director. But again, it came with some tough moments of not him not being there and being able to move forward. But I was happy that I got the time with them that I did to really kind of set a good foundation for me.
No doubt. Well, what a legacy to carry on for the
Oh
family.
yeah.
And I'm sure you felt like you're always trying to fill some pretty big shoes of your father in terms of leadership in this the nonprofit space. Um, of all of the different sort of professional roles, not necessarily positions, but professional roles that you've experienced in this nonprofit sector, what's been your favorite? Why has it been so meaningful?
I've thought a little bit about this, and my time at the club, even with my dad there, kind of mentoring, and then unfortunately after he passed away and left. But I think in this new role that I'm in with the Al Wooten Jr. Youth Center as executive director has probably been very fulfilling for me because it's kind of given me the opportunity to look at all the things that I've done over these last 30 some odd years and now bring it to a new organization that's unlike Boys and Girls Clubs, is unlike any other youth development organization that I've worked with. It also has allowed me to really kind of create my own environment, my own culture as well, but still respecting the culture that was there. And I work with an amazing team as well, and it's always good to really just have their support, hear their voices. So I think my current role is probably what I've been most excited about over all these years. And it's interesting that I've had, since 1992 up until now, all these years of experience of working in different organizations and working with different great leaders and great people that really are mission driven as well. But I've been most proud and most happy with what I've been currently doing because I also feel like I'm in that mode of getting ready to maybe pass the torch as well, and so to be able to be a part of that is exciting as well, and just going. I'm looking at different people and going, what, they'd be great in this role, or I really want to help them kind of position themselves to do that. And I don't think I felt like I got a chance to do that maybe in my other roles, as like you said, carrying on the legacy and when you get kind of consumed in that, I think your perspective and outlook becomes a little bit different than it is like maybe where I am right now.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, I'm willing to bet that if I ask you the mentor question, who were your mentors? Why were they
Yeah.
so important to you? You're going to speak
Yeah.
about your father, as you should, but I'm wondering, are there others as well? But I mean, please talk about your
Yeah.
dad, but also, who were the other mentors and why were they important in your life?
Yeah, of course, Dad was always there as a mentor, and to be honest with him, Chris, when I first started working with him, I didn't look at him as a mentor. He was my dad, and he was my
Right.
boss.
Right.
And anytime that I thought I could get away with something, that because he was my dad, he was my boss. And then anytime I thought I could, take vacation or call out sick, then I was his son. So it was a lose-lose situation most of the time
Right.
with that. But I understood, it wasn't until later on that I understood, what that meant or why that was important to him. But one of the things that I've had other mentors and different people kind of share with me is that it's important to have one mentor that looks like you and another mentor who does not look like you, just to get different perspectives and different, kind of like that high elevated view of certain situations and things. One mentor that I had was a gentleman by the name of Alan Young, who was the president and CEO at the Santa Monica Boys and Girls Club. And so just the way that he approached things and the way that he operated the organization really gave me a different perspective, and I can ask him certain questions because he was a master at kind of fundraising and board development and kind of that cultivating of board members and just different people. I learned from others that were in the Boys and Girls Clubs that had been there for a long time in terms of like, these guys, even though they were CEOs, they started out in the gym. They started out in the games room. And so it was important that they would share, like, you have to have a good perspective of your entire organization rather than just kind of coming in as the head person. So it was never a time that when I was at the club that I couldn't walk into the gym and go, you know what, this looks like great programming, or you know what, we need to improve here. You got to think about maybe incorporating this. And it wasn't because I read it in a book. It was because I experienced it. I knew it. I got a chance to live and breathe it. So those were the kind of mentors that helped me really have a good understanding of what my position was. And the other thing that I learned from a lot of them was like, they never asked someone to do something that they would not be willing to do themselves, from picking up a mop, from picking up a broom, from, so help stripping and waxing floors. It was just something that you did. And so, even, and I made sure, they also said, get out of your office. You got to go downstairs. And if you had the opportunity to talk to the kids or talk to the families and parents, that's what you need to do, because that's where you're going to get a lot of, your good feedback and understanding that, if you're kind of hitting the mark. And what it did for me in terms of talking to our parents and kids is understanding like what was important to them and what they like to see and what would they like to see differently, and what some of their needs were. It almost humanizes you, because I think sometimes we can sit in our offices all day and not even realize or consider that, that there's something else going on, or why it's important to do the work that we do.
Yeah, I totally get that. Perfect. Well, over the years, you've probably developed a philosophy of leadership, or at least have come away with some really important elements of leadership that are critical and important to you. What are those? What's important in your leadership in the nonprofit sector?
I think one of the things that I've been emphasizing and now, especially dealing with, what I could call now the younger generation. That wasn't always, the case. I guess I'm the old guy now. Excuse me. But the one thing that I think I try to emphasize is let your work speak for you. A lot of people come in and they have this intent that they want to make this amount of money, or yeah, we know you're offering this, but I really, and what I try to get people to understand is you let your work speak for you. And then if I will notice what you're doing, and then you will be definitely compensated for that work in terms of what you bring to the table. So, and you don't need to raise your hand and go, look what I'm doing today. Look, I did this today. Or look at, if you're an engaged executive director or CEO, you definitely should know kind of the atmosphere, environment, and climate that's happening in your organization. And if you don't, then you need to make sure that you have people out there that can provide that information to you. So, I always tell my staff is like, they'll be doing things. And I always say, I may not say anything about what you're doing, but I know what you're doing. I see it. I see it, and that's because I'm aware of what's going on. And that's kind of been my philosophy as it relates to just the work, because we know that the work that we do is a tireless job. I mean, no one does it for the money per se, but it is there. And that was probably the case maybe 30 years ago or so when I first started. But now, you can position yourself to do that. But, let that work speak for you. And I think it'll speak volumes in terms of what people may notice and see in you in terms of what you bring to the table.
That's great. That's wonderful. I love that. Thank you. So with each of our nonprofit leader guests, as you know, we focus on some key element of nonprofit leadership. And I'm really excited because we haven't talked about the topic we're tackling today, which is sort of all about overcoming the founder syndrome, following the departure for one reason or another of a founder, and all of the sort of complexities that exist around adapting and honoring and facing new challenges, doing things differently, doing them the same, all of that. So let's jump into that conversation, which I'm really excited about. And I know this was an experience that you had coming into your leadership at the Al Wooten Jr. Youth Center. So maybe if you can, tell us first a little bit about the center, and then secondly, like, how did you come into that leadership, and what was the transition like stepping into the after the founder?
Sure. The Al Wooten Jr. Youth Center has been in existence since the early 90s. It was started by a woman by the name of Myrtle Faye Rump, who unfortunately lost her son as a result of gang violence. He was an innocent victim. Sometimes in these gang initiation situations, the task is to go out and harm someone innocent, and he unfortunately was that person. And so, instead of retaliating, instead of kind of rallying and getting the family together to go out and retaliate, she chose to, really try to create an environment or a situation to where another mother would not have to deal with that pain and suffering of losing a son or a daughter, for that matter. So she, along with just herself and kind of bankrolled her property, went out and bought these storefronts on the corner of 91st and Vermont to really kind of create this environment, which slowly turned into an after-school program to help support boys and girls between the ages of 8 and 18 with their academics. So it kind of became a good foundation for being able to help with the math and reading gap that kids maybe inquiring and happening. So, and she was very similar to my dad's kind of crusade of she was just an army of one initially, and there were just other people who that volunteered and saw what she was doing. The irony with Miss Rump and my dad is that when she was starting, and she was starting in the early 90s, she was trying to find other organizations to help her kind of build that. And she actually met with my dad, from what I understood, and talked a little bit about what he was able to do with, kind of in a grassroots type situation. So to kind of come full circle again, I think just kind of adds to that. So she started this organization, and it began to grow and began to get legs. She even has been recognized by President Obama as one of these organizations that help provide a safe haven for youth. And so there's pictures of her with Barack Obama and others to really kind of heighten the work that she was able to do. And so from there were, after she unfortunately passed away, there were maybe a few other executive directors, but more recently her niece, rather, Naomi McSwain, was the executive director probably over the last 10 years prior to my arrival. So it still kind of had that family orientedness, so it was kind of like that connection. So for me, I was, baptized and immersed in Boys and Girls Clubs, and I was working at one and as a director of operations after I left Challengers in 2018. I kind of gave up on the whole, I don't want to be in charge anymore. I kind of want to just kind of take a back seat, and I don't want to attend board meetings anymore. I don't want to, it just kind of like, I'm just over it. I'm just done. So I took this operations position. Yeah, I needed a break. Took the operations position in another Boys and Girls Club, and I was there for maybe 3 or 4 years. And as I continued just to kind of be there, and just some of the things I was experiencing, I was just kind of going, I got a hankering to be an executive director again. I kind of want to be back in this environment where I can, kind of be a good leader, and also, just like I said, kind of create my own environment and culture. And so I just was looking through LinkedIn and saw the Al Wooten Jr. Youth Center, and kind of remembered it because the Boys and Girls Club that I was at in LA was on 50th in Vermont, and they were on 91st and Western, so wasn't that far away. I literally submitted my application via LinkedIn, and maybe an hour or two later, Naomi was calling me, and we had like a 3.5 hour conversation. She said, Corey, we were ready to hire you just right after our conversation. And I think it had a lot to do with just some of the similarities of experiencing what happened at Challengers, and also coming behind that founder as well, and understanding those nuances and challenges of what that is and what that was. So it seemed to be a good fit. And more importantly, also, Chris, I really wanted to be back in the South LA community as well. At that particular time, I was up in the Santa Clarita area, and that was fine. But I really wanted to be back in the South LA area, in the South LA community, because that's where I cut my teeth at. That's where I kind of learned a lot about this work. And so I had a desire to come back. And so things really just kind of all were in alignment. It was a smaller organization. Budget was very manageable as well. But just the potential. And it wasn't until part of my interview process, I had to do a panel with the entire staff, and was literally like just being at the head of a table and a firing gauntlet of questions. And for me, it was after I met the staff and really got a good sense of kind of where their passion was. I was 100% sold, and felt like, given the opportunity, that this would be where I would want to be at.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. But there must have
Yeah.
been some unique challenges, you coming in, following a founder, or even just the family member of a founder
Yeah.
who's serving as executive director, and probably just continuing on with the same activities, trends, and what were some of those challenges?
Yeah, the interesting thing, a lot of those challenges, of course, didn't happen until after I accepted the job. It wasn't like they could kind of give me like, well, here's what you're gonna have to deal with. I think some of the challenges really firsthand was like this kind of normalcy of this is how we do things.
Mhm.
And so I remember being in a staff meeting. They were talking about this particular event that they did every month, and I'm trying to go along to get along. Okay, fine, we're going to do it.
Sure.
And the staff person says, "Well, why do we do that?" And I went, "I don't know. Why do we do that?" It was just kind of like this light bulb moment of saying, "Hey, well, how can we continue to make sure that, I think, like you were alluding to, like, kind of still respect the history that's here with this maybe particular activity, but also make it something that is maybe more current, or maybe more voices are heard, or how do we modify and change it with still not being able to lose the essence of it?" And I think what that was one of the big things I kind of dealt with. But what happened was, the staff began to have more of a voice in terms of what that looked like for them.
Yes.
And so I think, as being the quote unquote kind of new person in, they felt more comfortable with kind of questioning things, or hey, here's an idea. What do you think about this idea? And I would be, the way that, we talked about mentors earlier, the mentors that I've had have always said, "Corey, you lead from the back. You don't, you provide what your staff and people need in order to be successful. It doesn't take you to be out in front going, 'Hey, look at me. This is what I'm doing.'
Good.
You provide that information and things to them to let them be successful." And so that's kind of the approach that I had to take. And I think it was a kind of it was almost like a courting period, I think, for all of them, because we'd be talking about something, and I'd go, "Well, what do you guys think? Do you think it's something that we should do, or something that we should?" And they weren't used to, like, "Oh, well, like, well, maybe we can change things, or maybe we may be able to look at this differently." So those were some of the things, just kind of internally, that were happening kind of like on the ground in terms of operational things.
Yep.
But there was some board things as well that I had to kind of get used to. I got a little board PTSD from my last kind of experience, and just being in board meetings and not quite understanding or not knowing what I may get in terms of, like, gotcha moments, or those types of things. But but having a better relationship with the board president and the finance committee and different committees, to be able to have them articulate, or have us have a discussion about what things may be, or what they may look like, or where we need to go before the board meeting, was something that provided a lot of comfort, and something that I was not used to.
That's great. That's great. You made a couple of points that really hit me hard. One was this idea that be prepared for the staff to find their voice finally, after a period of time where they might not have felt comfortable voicing opinions because it was going to be the executive director making or the founder making the decisions anyway. So that's a really interesting point, and it's great because it gives sort of the authority, the agency of the staff. And the second point was this idea that it's really hard to get to the bottom of what might be those issues when you're in a founder-run or founder-led organization because they're not willing to admit fault. Often they're not really being so sort of aware or connected to what they might be doing wrong because they don't have the broad experience of doing it 1,000 different ways or having the perspective that a lot of people do from having maybe worked or led a variety of different organizations. So thank you for highlighting those sort of two really important points. Did you find yourself having to balance sort of honoring the founder's vision, but then also bringing your own leadership style and making needed changes? You referenced the event or the monthly activity, but did you find that in other times as well?
I did, and I think for myself, it was really just kind of having a very candid conversation about, okay, what are the things that that we're going to stand on that are mission and vision focused,
Yep.
And let that kind of be our North Star. Like if what we're kind of proposing to do is getting away from what the intent of this organization is. And so one of my early kind of conversations with the entire staff was, what do we do? Yeah, we're an after school program. We help kids, but what is it that we do and feel that we do better or that we do just as good as anyone else?
Yeah.
And the conclusion that we came to was we save lives. So I was like, okay. So as long as we know that we're providing an opportunity to make sure that kids are safe and that families have what they need, then that's what our North Star is. So when we start talking about an event, or if we start talking about why we do this, that's what we need to go back to make sure that we're in alignment with that. It's like what I've learned early on is you cannot be everything for everybody. You may want to, but that's just not being realistic. I wish I had a magic wand, Chris, that could save every kid in every underserved community or just in every community, but that's not being realistic. But if we can make sure that we do these things and that we are impacting lives, then let's make sure we do that. So I think sometimes as we begin to kind of talk about a lot of different things, and we want to solve this issue or this issue it's kind of like, okay, let's bring it back. Let's make sure that we are doing this, and it's an open discussion. One of the other things that I was thinking when you were talking, what I did was I took each individual person out to lunch and said, let's talk. Tell me about your time here. What's working, what's not working. Because what I found that if there were others in the organization that had been here maybe as long as the founder, I may not get, there may be some people that maybe hold back and don't want to say anything. And sure enough, there was, one or two people was like, yeah, I mentioned something one time and it got completely slammed down and wasn't even considered. So, I had to kind of, read the room. I think coming in behind someone like that, you got to be able to get a good sense of feel of who's in the room and being able to kind of detect like who's sharing what and who's not sharing anything. And so I made sure that I talked to each individual person away from the center, so that we can have a candid conversation about, hey, what do you think? What's working? What's not working? If you had an opportunity, what would you need in order to be more successful in your role? It's like, I don't have a budget. I've never been given a budget. Every time I ask for something, it's either a yes or no. And it was like, that's it. Like, so It was just those little things, as it relates to like coming in behind a founder, and still honoring that legacy in terms of what they're. And so I think the short answer is just really still having a good foundation of what that is. I don't think I would have wanted to be there if I knew I had to come in and completely change everything. Like
Right.
that's not something new. But what I did have to learn too, and this was a key point for me, and I even tell people who are new coming into organization, you got to learn how to work inside out and not outside in. You mentioned like, oh, you have all this experience and you've been with this organization, and that's fine, and all that's true. But when I came to the Wooten Center, I just planted myself and said, I need to learn and figure out what this culture is before I want to start implementing or changing anything. And because if I do implement some things and want to change, I want to be able to say why. And it's just not just because I'm the new leader now, I can just do what I want. It's like, no, we need to start servicing or expanding out because the community has changed. We need to be offering these types of services. We may need to be partnering with these schools. So I had to come in and kind of sit and watch, feel, learn, have a good understanding in terms of that. And it's helped me because that first year, I mean, honest, I didn't know anything in terms of like, well, why do you do this? Why do you do that? I mean, I'd be sitting in a meeting like, oh, we have this event coming up. It's like, okay, Mr. Corey, what's our budget? I was like, I don't know, what was the budget last year? Oh, we didn't have a budget last year. So it was just like kind of like those aha kind of moments. I hope I answered the question.
No,
Felt like
totally.
it was
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's interesting because the shadow that a founder can cast can be enormous, and it can be hard to get out from under the shadow. But you mentioned a great way, which is sort of getting off campus, taking people to lunch and one-on-one conversations to really understand what they need to do their job better, how they might think to improve the organization. No criticism about what it might be have been in the past, but like it's a new day. We need to figure out how to move forward, and I need everybody's help. And you got it by working with them individually. And you made a great point about the inside out. You couldn't just necessarily bring your playbook from the Boys and Girls Club over to the Wooten Center and be like, here it is. Just do exactly what we did over there and everything's going to be great, because that would be a formula for disaster, right? You have to really understand the uniqueness of the organization from sitting in the center of the organization and figuring out the changes that you can make from the inside out. So bravo there. That is really well articulated and well said. But I want to jump into the founders syndrome part, because I think this is something that a lot of organizations and individual leaders struggle with. I'd love to know from your perspective, what are the signs that an organization might be suffering from founder syndrome?
Yeah, and I think one of the big things is you definitely have to listen, be a good listener. Some of the things that I would be listening for and heard sometimes. Well, we didn't do it that way, or we haven't done it that way before.
So good, yeah.
Or in my case, the former executive director is now on the board, which could be a challenge if you look at it however you want to look at it.
Sure.
But I get, you could do it that way. This is the way I did it. You could do it however you want, but this is how I did it. And I'd be like, okay, so is that code for do it this way? Is it also code for I'm on the board now, so technically I'm one of your bosses and you should do it this way.
Right.
So the one thing that I guess they got in me, and I don't know if they knew it or not. It's kind of like, look, this is not my first rodeo, so I'm going. You hired me and brought me on to be able to take the organization to the next level. That's something that one of the things that we discussed and talked about. And so for me, this is what that next level kind of looks like. I also pick and choose when to ask for permission and when to ask for forgiveness.
Right.
So that's something that is new for me, because I've always looked to ask for permission, but what I've realized is that there's the time sometimes where I'm going to just have to ask for forgiveness, because my intent, again, going back to that North Star, is just that. And so so there's those kind of nuances and things that I think that I've kind of heard and felt. And I think in some instances, you're going to have to go out there and make mistakes as well, not intentionally, but be but be valid, and knowing that what you're doing is for the mission of the organization. And I don't think anybody can fault you for that, if you go with that intent. I'm still kind of learning and dealing with some of those things as well. But it's a welcome challenge as in terms of what that
Right,
is. But
right.
yeah, yeah,
You don't necessarily unwind or even change a strong legacy overnight. It takes
right,
years and years, if not decades, because a lot of times the people are the same for
yeah,
years, if not decades, and some of them might be pretty well entrenched in their philosophies or the work, the way they do the work, and the way they think
yeah.
about the work. But is there something that boards, staff, and even funders could and should do to, maybe ease the challenges of this founders syndrome?
You know, I think yes. And one of the things the board did for me is, they assured me, Corey, this we entrust you to run the organization. We entrust you to make decisions, as well. So it was just kind of that confidence, that was given. I think from a funder's perspective, I know that there are organizations that will specifically fund a leadership transition, as well, which is something that's very, kind of scary and critical, as come not just for a founder, but just for any type of executive transition, that there may be. There's always this notion that, what's the organization going to be like? Are they still going to be viable? Are they still going to serve the community the way that they did? And funders typically will go, well, we're going to take a step back just to kind of see how things go. So where maybe you were getting $50 or $100,000 from that particular, foundation organization, they may hold it up. So, but I know that there are some foundations, specifically NSI, who was able to help us with this kind of executive transition as well. So there was, a handful of other executive directors that I had an opportunity to meet. One of them was coming in for someone who had been the founder and leading the organization for over 30 years. So when her and so what that did for the both of us, it provided us, a safe space to really talk about what our challenges were and how we were addressing them. And unfortunately, Chris, it gave me like a, "Ooh, thank God I didn't go there and I'm here" kind of moment as well. It's like, oh, I'd rather deal with this than rather deal with some of the other things that I'm hearing from you. But I think the other thing that boards and others can do is just really be transparent and recognize that it is going to be a transition and a difficulty for them as well. Because in my case, when I was at the Boys and Girls Club, my dad passed away. My dad was the person that was really leading the charge, always out in front in terms of fundraising and getting people to invest into the organization. It was opposite, because your board is supposed to be able to kind of set that up or be able to have access to do that. But when he passed away, all that went away. And so, yeah, I knew some of those same people, but I couldn't operate like dad. I couldn't do that. So I had to go to the board to say, hey, look, it's a new day, and we're really getting a cold bucket of water just thrown on us. We need to strategize, diversify our funding streams. Here's the support and help that I actually need to be able to do that. I think one of the biggest things too, and I learned this at the leadership conference, was what a succession plan looks like.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have those things in order. And so that was kind of like one of my big takeaways in terms of like, well, what does it look like now? Because it's going to look entirely different, when and if that transition happens with me as well. But let's make sure that there's something formal and in place, and what that needs to look like. So, those are some of the things I think that boards and others need to consider, in terms of, and that transition may look different for a founder as opposed to, someone maybe just leaving an executive director role.
Right.
And I think there's some opportunities for funders and others who may be kind of, nonprofit leaders to be able to really dissect this and what it actually can be and what it is. Because I know it's different from founders to an executive director, just maybe had a job for 4 or 5 years or even 10 years and they transition out, as opposed to being a funder. And I think those are the things that maybe they need to consider when moving forward with this particular issue and topic.
Yeah, yeah, so good. It just struck me that the founder probably never creates a job description for themselves as the executive director, and that means that you're creating a job description for the very first time when you are replacing a founder, which is obviously challenging because you don't necessarily know what they did every day or what their responsibilities were or who they knew. And the other reality is that most founders don't care. It's not that they don't care. They don't think about themselves as not being the leader of the organization. So they don't create redundancies in relationships. They don't document their processes. They don't bring in a deputy to kind of record the day-to-day or to have a relationship with someone else in the organization if the proverbial bus, comes and knocks you down, right? So these are all things that are more obvious when you've had the transitions in executive directors over the years and you've built these systems and you've built these succession plans, you've built these processes. But with a founder, none of that stuff exists, right? So you're the one that gets to create them and ideally do it better, meaning the roles and responsibilities, the relationships with key stakeholders to others in the organization, all of that kind of good stuff. I know that we're coming up on time, so wanted to just sort of leave the audience with your best guidance and advice about taking the reins of an organization as a founder, whether they're still involved or they stepped away. What advice would you give to anyone that's stepping into that kind of situation?
Yeah, I think some of the advice that I would give really is just to, go into it, with eyes wide open, go into it, constantly asking any and every question that you can possibly think of. And don't feel like you're going to step on toes or offend, because at the end of the day, when that person leaves, how many times you're going to hear, and what I would hear, Chris, all the time with my dad, oh, well, Lou used to do it this way.
Right.
And I'd be like, and so, the first, 500 times I heard that from various people, you stop and think, well, maybe I should do it that way. But then you also have to remember not to lose identity with who you are as a leader as well.
Yeah.
Because
right.
If you do, yeah, you'll be, one of the mistakes that I made early on after my dad passed was this notion of trying to please everyone was just like a thing, so like if you look at the ingredients, it was like, dad passed away, I'm grieving, I'm trying to hold this together, supporting mom, I had a family of my own. And so my whole thing was like, that was kind of like in one bowl. But then I would have this person come and complain about this, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take care of that. And then the person that liked maybe what the other person complained about wants to go back, and I go, oh, okay, we'll just go back. It was like, it was trying to be like a chef in a big kitchen and serving food to everybody, and somebody didn't like it because it was too salty, and then I'd make it sweet, and then the other person would complain about how sweet it was. Bottom line is, you as that leader now, you have to stand your ground and say, this is how it's going to go. So when people would say, well, Lou used to do it this way, I'm like, you're damn right he did, but now he's not here, so I'm doing it this way. And either you're jumping on the bus or you can get off. I just had to stand up for myself because I was too busy people pleasing and getting knocked down. And I remember, just not sure, like, oh, I'm not the right person for this job. I can't do it, and this, that, and the other. And so, my advice would really, you have to really grab some inner strength in your core just to know that you're the right person for this opportunity. They selected you because they see something in you that they believe in, and you have to believe in yourself. Pay homage to what was before you. One of the things that we do at the Wooten Center, we have Founders Day. So we've designated a day where we celebrate, Miss Rump and all the things that she was able to do. And the kids are a part of that as well. So there's a lot of things that you can actually do. We have our vision dinner every year, and we talk about the history of the organization. And there's old executive directors and that are invited to be there as well, because we know about this journey that it's taken this organization to get to where it is. So we pay homage to that and make sure that that's there, and that our funders and our kids and parents know about what we do. But more than anything, the advice that I give is, you have to know that you're the right person for the job and be willing to go through the fire if you have to do that, because people are going to challenge you. It may not be board, it may not be staff, it may be the community as well. Right. You know how many times I've heard like, oh, well, it's not going to be the same now that person's gone. And my answer to that was, it's not supposed to be the same. It's supposed to look different. If it looked the same, yeah, if we look the same, that person hopefully would still be here, but it's not. So it's just some of those realities and it's okay to say out loud. When I would say, people are like, well, it's not the same, and I would say it's not supposed to be the same. It's going to look differently. So either you can handle it or you can't. So, but I got work to do. I got some things to do, and I need your help, and this is how I need your help. That's good. I was very just mindful of what other people's help could look like in order to kind of keep this legacy going as well.
That's right.
So I guess my other advice is, don't take all this on your own. There's other people that can be a part of this as well, to make sure that legacy continues and that you're doing the work that, that the mission and vision of the organization was there for.
I love it. Well, change can be good too. It's often hard. It doesn't have to be bad. It can be extraordinarily good. And I appreciate you, Corey, for sharing with us what it's really like, because I think a lot of people don't have that experience and wonder what it would be like to come in after a founder and address the founder syndrome. And you've done extraordinarily well. And we're grateful for you sharing your expertise and wisdom. We could probably talk for days more. And I know Absolutely. It's going to take the audience a bit to unpack all of the good advice that you shared, but it does bring us to the end of today's conversation and today's episode. Before I leave, I just wanted to thank you, Corey, once again for being a part of this, and also thank the audience for joining us. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. Don't also forget to jump into our other podcast, Mastering Fundraising and the Nonprofit Edge. We're always talking to extraordinary leaders in the nonprofit space about what makes them special, and also the things that they know that very few other people know. So until next time, we're wishing you all the best and encourage you to all do what you can for this world by leading for good. Thanks all.
Thank you for joining us for this most recent episode of Lead for Good. Our passion is helping nonprofit leaders reach their full potential as leaders, and we sincerely hope this episode has been edifying for you. Please subscribe to this podcast to not miss any of our Lead for Good conversations. We welcome your feedback, suggestions, and comments via email at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Lead for Good is a production of Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership. Please visit us on the web at www.fulcrumleader.com. Until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you to always lead for good.